Video, yeah, and welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings in the YouTube Atheist Community and Stickam Fun. No Stickam, of course, it's Google Plus, but yeah, it sucks. Anyway, gee, my eyes are going bad. Can't tell when the light's actually on. So anyway, yeah, so got bit by a tick, so yeah, I'm dealing with the penicillin shit, which is fucking me up a bit, but anyway, anyway, and so big news is kind of old fan had her debut of her movie thing. It's still a movie thing. It isn't quite a movie yet, but it's, you know, it's almost, it's getting there. But anyway, so it was really good, you know, in the theater, and it was good to have the laugh track, so to speak, you know, just to see the raw reaction of people who haven't no idea what's coming, kind of a thing. And that's sort of the trick, you know, we already kind of know what's going to happen in some respects, so it's not quite the same kind of impact. But, you know, the Frankenstein thing is kind of perfect. You know, some of the other bits maybe need some work. But, yeah, it's a perfect bit. And, you know, just needs some add-ons, you know, but really quite good. Yay, Amanda, kind of thing. Anyway, and I did my Vloggerdome video on physics, and, you could use some work too. It's, you know, you got to make it so people can understand it, and yet you want to be true to the technical part. So yeah, that is a tricky balance. Yeah, you know, it's kind of a tricky balance. So I'm going to work on it. I'm just going to keep making bits and see if, you know, I can just make the argument more and more clear and more visible. But I think it does it. You know, if somebody can sit through it, they can sort of get what I'm talking about here, and get how really, really, really incredibly simple the universe really is. In terms of process, rudimentary. So I think I'll do a response video to this guy here in this video, just because, you know, what the fucking is kind of pointless. There's very little to talk about. So anyway, the room last night was kind of a fail. I was in a really crappy mood, just because, yeah, it was kind of a crappy day. And, you know, it's just been that, you know, you have good days, bad days, bad day. So I wasn't really in the mood for much. Didn't have much patience with people. I really have no more patience with certain individuals. I mean, certain individuals who claim to be philosophers and have, you know, violated fundamental fallacy rules in their philosophy, like don't contradict yourself. But anyway, really bad, just, you know. So, logic rolls the dice is one individual I'm talking about. I just ain't gonna play with him until, you know, so there's something real here besides academic bullshit and, you know, playing with words, and that's all. It's just wordplay and not concept play. Concepts are getting lost in, you know, games played with vocabulary. You know, things all of a sudden aren't happenings in the universe because we say to them. So all of a sudden, whatever happening is somehow a to them thing, and it's not a real thing anymore. That kind of crap is just, that's just playing too silly a game with words. Yeah. And, yeah, there's some other guy who's okay, but I mean, he's kind of trolly. He just goes through this stuff, and then all of a sudden he'll pull out some truther crap or something, like I'm going to waste my time with that crap. But the whole point is that I just don't find the conversation at all useful in terms of getting to some sort of hard truth, because you can't agree on what words mean. Bad isn't bad all of a sudden. There's bad, and then there's really bad. Like, real bad in the real world, and then there's bad, like, bad, we say so. And somehow they don't know the difference. When I say bad, I mean it's really bad. It's not just bad. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just silly. Like I said, you can't have a conversation if you don't have agreed upon vocabulary. Forget about it. So, let's see, do I need to add anything else? So yeah, the Google Plus fucked up again. So I just don't know. Maybe I'll have to go back to TinyChat. I mean, you can't depend on Google Plus to record the room. It only recorded 29 minutes of almost 2 hours, and you're like, you know, if I would have stayed longer, it would have been a total disaster, because none of it would have been saved. And they did tell me, people did tell me about it, and I kind of just fluffed them off as like, well, what do you want me to do? And it was like, okay, make a new room. Okay, all right. Well, that, sort of makes sense, I guess. You have to keep making new rooms every hour just to be sure Google didn't fuck up something. But, I don't know. I mean, it might be less trouble for me just to do the recording of the Tiny Chat instead and say, fuck it. So anyway, I'll have to decide. I don't know what to do. I want to do something different. So I have to I have to figure out how to do something different. This just doesn't work. Whatever this is, it just doesn't work. And I'm not too big a fan of the live conversation, trying to do philosophy that way. I mean, I don't think it's ever been too successful. It's just trolls, and they just, force you to defend word after word after word after word, and you just keep doing it over and over and over again. What point is that? And it's just got to be some way to evolve conversation where you say, okay, look, we've done 10 videos. We should have learned something out of these 10 videos where we can agree on certain words, and you're not going to change the definition anymore, right? We're going to stick with this definition, right? I mean, that's got to be a rule somewhere, because they just keep doing this fucking catch-22. I'm going to, all of a sudden, contradiction's okay. All of a sudden, complete nonsense is okay. No, not okay. So anyway, this is just such an illustration of it. This is, you just can't get more of a duplicitous liar kind of thing. I mean, to accuse other people of inventing gods when he is so anti-science and anti-fact and slanders the facts all over the place. I mean, really known facts about biological evolution. And for none of these people to call him on it. Look at this, 7 thumbs up. This is a horrible video. I mean, absolutely horrible video in terms of the number of lies, deceptions, perversions of what people have said, including Dawkins and Darwin. It's just an insane lie, and people are rewarding it. So it just shows that there's a bunch of, that these people aren't atheists, that are hanging around this atheist community. They have no regard for facts whatsoever. No respect. So, let's do it.
I mentioned yesterday that I'm not entirely convinced that love is simply a piece of cheese for us, the mice, to chase in order to get us to breed, because that would imply that...
Alright, so he uses the word love, like that means something. The attachments we have, first there's sex, okay? If you're talking about sex, then you have to talk about sex. You can't use the word love. And then there's the bond that becomes between somebody you might be having sex with and who's had your children. And then there's bonds that are created in social groups, so you keep a gene pool. You're protecting like genetics. These are all biological, studied phenomenon. And you seem preposterously ignorant of the fact that social dynamics is an evolving, chemically evolving, we have a psychology for it, phenomenon. It's not, it just doesn't happen out of nowhere. It happens because the organisms that had these qualities psychologically of attachment survived better than the ones that didn't. That's how evolution works.
Dawkins's selfish gene,
which there's no way he has read. There's absolutely no way. He couldn't say the things he's going to say about what that book says and have read the book. No fucking way.
actually has some sort of intent.
Right. That would be exactly explicitly something Dawkins would say doesn't exist. And he's talking about the fact that evolution is even more rudimentary than we think it is, in that it's not really the qualities that we have that are competing as qualities. They're just competing as little bits of code on a string of a molecule. And they're like viruses competing with each other. Like they can't take over everything, because if they do, they'll break the organism. But they have to try to make themselves redundant, and they have to make themselves difficult to, they don't have to make. I'm saying if they don't do certain things, they will lose the competition for space on the train of the molecule. And so they're just little viruses fighting for space on a train.
I think that the selfish gene is kind of a misnomer in the same way as I think that
Well, whatever. I mean, he's going to say, well, here, okay, so the selfish gene is a misnomer. Dawkins would tell you it's not a literal statement. They aren't actually selfish, okay? It's just that they are entirely built for one mission. Get on the train. Period. There's no other mission. If they have faculties that'll keep them on the, get them on the train and keep them on the train, those faculties will be rewarded.
natural selection is kind of a misnomer.
Natural selection is a misnomer. Again, now how could it possibly be? I mean, even if you don't like the word natural selection as if nature is something, it converts to environmental selection. The environment dictates what you're going to be required to have to survive, and if an organism doesn't have one of those tools to defeat his million brothers and whatever things are out there also trying to win the same territory, he won't reproduce. That piece of code won't get on the train.
Because each one assumes that there's some sort of intent behind it all.
No, neither one of them says anything about intent. Absolutely nothing. The selfish gene aggressively tries to make sure there is no thought of intent. Aggressively.
Dawkins seems to assume that...
No, he doesn't seem to do that. That's a lie. That's a preposterous lie. Nobody who reads his book could seem to think he seemed to do that. It's no fucking way. He does exactly the opposite. Is quite explicit in saying exactly the opposite.
The selfish gene has some sort of will, which is...
There, you're a liar, okay? Do you understand what a liar is? He says no fucking such thing. He says exactly the opposite, that it's just a stupid fucking arrangement, and it's actually the seats on the train that are forcing the thing to fit into the seat. It's the seat, if you're going to say that something has a will, that would be the seat. And obviously a seat can't have a will.
Not genetically identifiable in it, that seeks to procreate and endure.
Well, look, it's just a fact. You have to have that function or you will not survive. It's a fundamental biological fact. You're insulting a most rudimentary piece of scientific knowledge, that's what natural selection is. A bunch of stuff goes out, it fights with each other. The thing that wins, the thing that's left with the sword at the end, is the thing that its molecule replicates. That's the rules. The stuff that's dead can't replicate. It can't be in the future. It's dead. I mean, this is 5th grade biology.
There's no evidence of this whatsoever.
Right. No evidence besides every stick of evidence. Every observed biological organism in its environment. Every single thing that's ever been studied. The sperm and the egg is a fact. They all have them. You're a liar. A preposterous fucking liar to say there's no evidence.
He's just deduced this based on observing the gene's behavior, or what he perceives to be the gene's behavior.
What he perceives to be? No, that's right. They've studied it. They watch the chromosomes. They see how the alleles get attached and how they develop over time. And they have thousands of years of genetic information that they've studied in its evolution. This isn't an unknown science. This is a completely documented science. The genome has been documented.
I'm not convinced by that.
Right. You refuse to accept science because it doesn't say what you want it to say, which is some sort of magic stuff. You don't want to think that your psychology has been written by a function that just says replicate for the sake of replicating. There is no other agenda. successfully replicate in just the right amount and in just the right way to defeat all other replicators. Period. That's the only rule.
I'm not saying that he's wrong, but what I'm saying is.
Oh, I think you just said that, and you're wrong into misparaphrasing what he said in the first place. So it's silly to say I don't think he's wrong when he didn't say what you're saying. I don't think he's wrong. That's even a double lie.
I'm not convinced.
Convinced of what? Your own lie that you made up and put in his mouth?
Same thing as, the idea that we love in order to allow us to survive.
Yeah, right. So he doesn't believe that it's a biological function, that our psychology has evolved to make us attach to other members of our genetic pool. So he doesn't understand lion prides, chimpanzee or gorilla tribes. He doesn't understand the lonely crocodile. He doesn't understand elephants, where the males are basically rogues and the females run the society. Doesn't understand that those are all biologically, through evolution, controlled psychological dispositions. The animal is disposed to do it that way by a condition of psychological responses, hormonal responses.
Order to allow us to procreate, etc.
So again, he doesn't believe in evolution. I mean, that is evolution, right? You have to have a tool and certainly to survive, but certainly the only reason why you survive is to procreate. If you don't procreate, that's the first thing you have to accomplish for your code to get to the future. You have to fucking procreate. You will be a failure genetically. You will not go any further. You will not be built upon as a design model if you do not procreate. It's a fucking necessity of survival as a code, as a molecule.
Love in a conjugal or sexual sense is meant to get us to produce more humans.
Well, again, to call horniness love is a little bit silly, so I don't know exactly what you mean by love. Again, the attachment mechanism is a little bit different than the horny mechanism, and we happen to just be in a class of organism where it gets a little bit muddled because it's a hierarchical psychology. And so in most societies like that, in most other animal organisms, the truth is the alphas do most of the procreating because that's conducive to better molecule design. And so that's where it gets a little bit fudgy about this whole attachment thing and ownership and possession and all those kinds of emotions, which are part of what we might call emotional love, is often just possession. I mean, lots of men have killed their ex-wife because they just couldn't deal with the fact that he didn't own her anymore.
What? We're meant to do something?
No, we're forced to do something, or we're constrained by biological, psychological mechanisms that make it more comfortable for us to do certain things, and that we to not do them will cause us some discomfort, because it is the imperative of the functionality in an ignorant world where we can't know the game we're playing, that we be compelled to do certain things. The salmon have to swim up the stream. They have to blow their guts out and die. That's their obligation. They're not told ahead of time that's the game they're playing. They have to be driven by desire, by feelings. That's what we're driven by. Feelings that compel us to go up the stream of the Lady Road.
Okay, by what? What?
By hormonal and physiological responses to stimulus. You heard of pheromones? The fact that we're visually stimulated by women and shapes, and they cause certain things to happen. You haven't noticed that? You haven't noticed the phallic symbol idea?
What's up there? What's the puppeteer? What's up there?
So what's up there? So this idea that here you have a simple mechanism, survival of the fittest, okay, a gladiator war to determine who's the best gladiator he breeds. This concept is so simple and so easy to understand, and he just called it a God theory. He just said, what's your God controlling this enhancement of qualities that something might have, or this confinement of our qualities of our psychology? What's this God that's imposing this will on us? There's no God. It's a simple fact. You make a million of it. They fight for survival. The one that survives and procreates, that's the winner.
Manipulating us in this way. Not only that, that kind of implies that there is an us to be manipulated, right?
There is. You're a DNA molecule. You have what are called testicles. I don't know whether you've noticed them. They might be very small in your case. But you have these things called testicles, and they purchase a thing called sperm, which actually has your identity in it, at least half of it. So, yes, half of your identity is in those little testicles being popped out every day, and those little sperm can meet with a female's egg, and it creates what's called a new human being, which will do the same thing in the future, and that's how you remain in existence. The little piece of half of you, anyway, remains in existence.
If something is being manipulated, then there's something manipulating it.
Well, that's just a silly concept, right? You put those words in everybody's mouth. You said, something's manipulating it. No, something is a function of it. It's a function of biology that things will turn out this way. There's no manipulating with any kind of thought or reasoning. It's just a manipulation by environmental circumstances, by the facts of life.
And there is also something being manipulated.
Well, quite obviously, our DNA code is manipulated. That's how come we don't look like Tyrannosauruses. Obviously. Yeah, there's a something. It's called identity. And there's lots of organisms that have a different identity because they have a different DNA code, because they have a different history of success or failure as ancestors.
And that means that us becomes something of a ghost in the machine, I guess.
Well, again, so now he brought up God, and now he's bringing up ghost. A ghost in the machine in what sense? It couldn't be more explicit. You can trace your lineage all the way back to the green slime, a bunch of little organisms that succeeded in procreating. And that's all there are. There aren't any organisms that fail to procreate in your genetic code. Not a single one. Not one single one. All the ones who fail to have procreate there's not one of them in your genetic code.
Which, again, that may be Schopenhauer or Nietzsche's will.
I don't know. Schopenhauer and Nietzsche's will. Again, I don't know whether they said the will was something magical. Is that what they said? I don't think they said that. They didn't say it was any kind of ghost in any fucking machine. Certainly Schopenhauer didn't.
Describe the idea of the will, because it does kind of solve these problems.
I don't know. Do you subscribe to the idea of the will? What idea of the will are you talking about? I mean, that's probably one of these verbiage things again, these vocabulary. What do you mean by will besides an expression of desire? What?
Either that or there's a God up there.
So that's him again doing this same old bullshit. We have two choices. My God will, my will that is full of whatever my thing called choice is, and my fucking power to power it, whatever those things are, those magic forces, are God. There's nothing in between like desire, manifested as a byproduct of genetic construction. Desire manifested as a byproduct of physiological construction. That rational choice isn't one of the choices, huh? Yeah, you're a fair cop. Fuck you.
Well, we all know the problems behind that one.
Right, implying that we have such a problem, or science has such a problem. There is no problem, except you're a liar. To imply that science is at all confused about whether it's a God problem.
Although one could say that they are one and the same, the will and God. You're just using different terminology.
I don't know why I would call physiological construction as a byproduct of evolutionary success in a competition for survival and procreation, why would that definition invoke godness?
Describe the same thing. I don't know what people mean when they say God, so I'm not even going to get into that.
Well, you don't know what they mean. I think usually in most cases they mean Mohammed. I think is the most successful case, and then there's Jeebus. You don't understand those stories? And then there's silly Buddha crap, where God is actually death, I guess. Death is the best. The closest you can get to God is death.
But what I would advise people who sort of say that evolution is just a motivation mechanism, or...
They don't say evolution is. Okay, they say our psychology is. The manifestation of conscious desire, of sentient feelings that provoke response, necessity to act. That's evolution.
Everything that we do is just a mechanism that has been placed there to get us to do something.
Yes, that's what's called your ego. I guess you never heard of Sigmund Freud. But yes, you have an ego, you have hunger for food every day, and you have an obvious, usually desire, libido, sense of needing to be comforted by the opposite sex in some way. This is part of the biology. These functions are well known, and to dispute their existence as just merely a byproduct of evolution is just the silliest thing. And the fact that 7 people, no thumbs down, would reward you for saying something so silly. I mean, I think there's Christians that would concede this part of evolution.
Should actually examine that, and...
Yes, we should examine it. You haven't read The Selfish Gene, and you're asking us to examine the character of our knowledge base. Now, I think you need to examine the character of your knowledge base. You're a preposterously ignorant, arrogant, pompous jackass talking absolute rubbish. You should examine that and realize, oh yeah, that's not a good thing. But of course you can't figure out the difference between good and bad, can you?
Sort of, or at least examine the way you talk about it.
No, you should do that. You just put preposterous words in Richard Dawkins' mouth. Preposterously silly, absolutely nonsensical rubbish in his mouth. You're you're a thought criminal. You're a verbiage criminal. You're a philosophy criminal.
Because I think that the way that it gets discussed can lead to sort of some pretty rutted and lazy thinking. Because
oh yes, they're lazy. You didn't read the book that you're talking about, and you put the title of the book in your video, and you're going to talk about lazy?
Start to believe that the will to life or the will to survive or the will to anything is an end in itself.
The fact of the matter is, procreating exists as a necessary end in itself for you to exist. If you don't replicate your code stops existing. Period.
Which is okay, as long as you're actually going to say, this is what I mean by it.
I don't know what anyone you're talking to is. So again, you're talking to a non-person about this subject. The fact that life is pointless, purposeless, useless, is just a fact. It's a function. It isn't something that has purpose. It's a function, period. It's like a stalagmite. It's a function of the circumstance. It's what matter does in a certain condition. We're in a certain condition of DNA replication, and there's certain things we will do because of that. Period.
But it always seems to get regressed off to this idea of survival as an end in itself.
No, procreation as an end in itself. Survival is a means to procreate. If you do not survive to procreate, you will not procreate. After you have procreated, in many cases, your utility is basically to be shark food. You're basically to be consumed in some protective act of the hive.
But we don't have any evidence at all.
Yes, we have so fucking much evidence. Every studied organism on this earth is evidence. Every single one. They're all playing the same game by the same rules. You're an idiot. You're a liar to say we don't have any evidence.
Than our own observations that survival is an end in itself.
Well, the fucking observations are what they are, but again, no one has saying survival is an end in itself. Who is saying that? Who? Liar. You're just lying some more. Complete straw man. Who's arguing survival is the end in itself? It's obviously a means to procreation by biology standards, and that's why we survive. We do not survive for any other reason than you must survive to procreate. You have to collect energy to make copies. You can't make copies out of nothing. You have to make copies out of something. And so the basic mechanism has to consume for a while before it can start producing.
Things fear death. Things seek to survive.
They don't fear death. They fear discomfort. So again, saying things, what things you're talking about? Oh, you mean human beings. Animals do not understand or have any knowledge of death. No conception of it whatsoever. Absolutely meaningless to them. Okay, they still have fears, but death isn't one of them. They fear pain and suffering. They fear discomfort. That's what they fear. And you can see that in once they've been in a fight with, like with bears or cats or whatever it would be. You can see that the next time they have an apprehension about whether or not they should get into conflict because they remember their wounds.
Things seek to pass on their DNA, apparently.
They don't seek to do any of that. Okay? They don't. They seek the comfort that they will be provided if they do those things. They are obligated to satisfy desire mechanisms in which they will feel deprivated, and that deprivation will become harsher and harsher the longer they go without food, water, and social comfort, let us call it.
They're aware that they're doing this or they're not aware of it, but their actions are not consciously motivated. They're motivated by something that they don't understand.
Well, they do understand it. It's called subconsciousness, and it's called the programming that we have inside of us. And so to say we don't understand those concepts, of course we do. We clearly do understand that we are motivated by biological hormonal mechanisms that will put us in moods and create energy to do something. They're triggers, they're reflexes. Your brain is a reflex, and it will reflexively react to circumstances, and it'll do it based on its own timing cycle, and it'll base it on external circumstances, and those things will happen because certain other things happened. So if you're comfortable in drinking a glass of wine, maybe you'll get an erection. That works for some people.
Etc. Well, okay. That's nice. That's a great explanation for things, but there's no evidence for it.
Well, again, this no evidence thing, there couldn't be pretty much more evidence. There's so much fucking evidence. You have so much evidence, you don't have enough suitcases to put all the evidence in. There's just so fucking much evidence.
Show me the part in a gene that wants, actually.
No, I won't do that, because that's a false premise. The genes don't want anything. Alright? They don't. They don't have any brain. They're just mechanical devices, and if they are structured through evolution in certain ways, they'll more likely get on the train that is the DNA molecule, and then there'll be more likely to be more of them in the future.
To do what it does. There's no evidence for that at all.
There's a ton of evidence that it is built to get on the train.
We can see what a gene does. We can figure out its coding and all that kind of thing, but we can't find an aspect of that gene that makes it selfish or that makes it
again, the selfish gene was not selfish in some psychological sense. It was just a concept that the mechanism has no other ambition, in the sense that there's no other feature that it's being built to do except fit a keyhole to get on a seat. All it's doing is in having many copies of itself in variety is just finding one that fits the keyhole the best of the environmental circumstances, and that's all. That's the only test. You fit the environmental circumstance or you don't fit it. Winner, loser. Period. no will, no want, no anything except the fact that it won't exist in the future unless it's a key and it goes into the slot.
We want to survive.
So again, want is a silly concept. You brought that up. You straw man that. Dawkins doesn't say anything about genes wanting anything. Silly word to use. They're constructed to do.
We have put that idea on that gene. We have.
You have, you slandering motherfucker. No, we have. You have. You, the liars and slanderers, have. The anti-science folk.
We have anthropomorphized this gene.
Who has? Has he pointed to somebody who has done that? Some videos on YouTube where their gene has been anthropomorphized by anyone other than Piro, one of your silly allies? Who's done that? Who's anthropomorphized except people on your side, shithead? Oh, that's right, no one. So again, another preposterous lie.
We've anthropomorphized, in a sense, evolution and...
Yeah, no, who? We have. That means you have, the liars have? Yes, you, the liars, have. Okay, but no people who like science or have respect for science or the scientific method have. You have. Science hasn't. You have. Dawkins didn't. You have. You are the fucking liar here.
The whole thing, these things become processes that we believe phenomenally exist simply by ease of use.
Simply by ease of use. We believe these are processes. Want is not a process we believe exists. We don't believe it exists as a ease of use or any of that shit. So you're just a liar.
I mentioned to Hover Bobber yesterday that to say that a gene intends for something to happen is the same thing as saying...
I don't believe Hover Bobber would ever say a gene intends. So, again, I think you just lied about him.
That the moon intends to cause tides on Earth. There's no evidence that a gene...
This is preposterous, right? I'm sure Hover Bobber made a response saying, I'm not arguing... Dawkins isn't arguing for any intent. That's silly. I mean, this is grotesque. You're such a fucking liar.
Doing anything other than acting like an automaton. None.
And guess what? You're doing the same thing, jackass. You've been programmed by environmental experience. What do you think? You've been alive, fuckhead, for so long, and you've had all these little experiences. You don't think that exposure is exactly the piano you're playing? You really think you're playing some magic piano? Someone you didn't learn to play by your life experience, your acquisition of vocabulary? I mean, you're just doing the same thing the moon is doing. You're following the environmental rules.
Why do we think that it has some telos? Why do we believe that it's going?
You're the one who's doing all that. You are. Name me the scientist saying it has some telos, it's going somewhere. Point to him. Will you quit making accusations to a fog you have labeled me? I am so sick of this shit. Mention somebody's name. Will you point to the fucking person you're arguing with? Because I claim they don't fucking exist. They're straw men. They're fucking scapegoats for your bullshit. You're just a fucking liar.
Somewhere. This makes no sense to me at all.
No, you're a liar.
Oh, and this is the will...
This is not their argument. It makes no sense, this fake argument I made about them.
Comfort, because, you know, the whole thing, all this desire that we have out there is allegedly some sort of mechanism that actually has an intent behind it.
No, there's no one arguing it has an intent beyond the fact that it has to serve standards. It has to fit keyholes. It has to do certain things or it won't exist. It's just the rule of the game. You have to play the game to win the game. It's like you have to have a lottery ticket in your pocket somehow to win the lottery. So somehow you have to have the ticket in your fucking pocket.
Sorry, that is an extraordinary claim and not to poke somebody.
Oh, yeah, whatever. You're just such a fucking liar to say you have defeated anything but the most straw man that is a straw man of a straw man. This is so far from being anything close to a man. This is just a heap of fucking straw, period. And it's not even a big heap. It's just one fucking stupid piece of straw. You're arguing with a piece of straw, you lame motherfucker. And the fact that people reward you for lying compulsively is just disgusting.
Else's ideas, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Right, so he's saying it's an extraordinary claim to associate our impulse to fuck women, that's a fucking sensible imperative of evolutionary construction. There's no way evolution could explain it. He thinks it's extraordinary that DNA molecules would be conformed of mechanical elements that would make penises, sperm, and eggs.
Thank you very much.
Liar. You fucking cunt liar. Thank you very much for what? Lying? Slandering people? Fuck you very much. Fuck you very, very fucking much. Lying fucking cunt.